Be prepared. Because what's coming isn't just a challenge, it's the final test before the next version of you can rise. And the force behind it? Saturn in Aries. This is not another emotional wave. It's not a moment to bypass. This is pressure with purpose. And if you've been feeling like your path is being blocked from all directions, it's because Saturn isn't trying to stop you. It's trying to refine you. Aries is raw fire. Saturn is cold structure. And when they meet, the spiritual friction is undeniable. Your impulses are being tested. Your ego is being cornered. Your discipline is being confronted. And all the excuses you used to get away with, they're collapsing. Have you felt it? The inner fire that says, I'm ready. And the outer world that says, not yet. The drive to act. And the sudden resistance that makes everything feel harder than it should be. That's the test. It's not about punishment. It's about alignment. Because Saturn doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your truth. And until you can hold your flame without burning your path down, you're not ready for what's on the other side. In a moment, we'll explore exactly why this portal feels so intense, how to move through the fire without collapsing, and the one shift that Saturn is demanding from your soul before it lets you pass. But first, breathe. Because if you're still standing, even with all this pressure, it means the test has already begun. And you haven't failed. You're just being shaped into the version of you that won't need permission to walk through the next door. Some planetary shifts pass quietly, but others don't whisper. They press, they corner, they ignite something deep inside your timeline, and they wait. Not for your action, but for your alignment. Saturn in Aries isn't here to inspire you. It's here to confront you, to reveal where you've been impulsive, ungrounded, reactive, to strip away everything you've been calling drive that was really just avoidance in disguise. Because Aries wants to move. It charges forward. It fights to survive, to express, to lead. But Saturn brings structure, limits, time. And when the two meet, like they are right now, your soul gets pulled between instinct and initiation. You feel it, don't you? That strange tension in the body. The sudden stops in your momentum, the fire building inside, while the world outside seems frozen. It's not a glitch, it's not resistance, it's refinement. This is not just a Saturn transit, it's a reckoning with your false self. The version of you that used ambition to mask confusion. The version that rushed into things to avoid stillness. The version that said, I'm ready, but wasn't rooted enough to hold what was coming. And now Saturn is asking, do you actually want this life, or do you just want the feeling of motion? Because the next chapter isn't being built on desire alone. It needs discipline. It needs clarity. It needs a nervous system that doesn't mistake urgency for truth. This is why everything suddenly feels heavier. Why decisions feel sharp. Why your triggers are louder than usual. Because Saturn isn't punishing you. It's preparing you. You are being shaped, not gently, but deliberately, into someone who can hold fire without burning the bridge they need to cross. And right now, the test isn't whether you can move faster, it's whether you can move from your center. The people around you won't understand. They'll say, just do it. They'll say, you've changed. But what they don't see is that Saturn is rewiring your entire timeline so that when you finally act, it's not from fear, It's from frequency. This is the reckoning, not with the world, but with the parts of you that thought rushing was the same as rising. Why Saturn in Aries feels so heavy right now? There's a very specific weight in the air, and it's not just yours. If you've been waking up already tense, already second-guessing your direction, already doubting yourself before the day even begins, that's not random. That's Saturn working through Aries, and it's personal. Because Saturn is not a loud energy. It doesn't create obvious chaos. It creates friction, invisible pressure that builds inside your will, your identity, your drive, until it finally hits a wall you can't ignore. Aries wants forward motion. It wants to act, to initiate, to conquer. It wants freedom without explanation. But Saturn, the great restrictor, isn't here to let you run wild. It's here to make you prove you're ready. And this is where the heaviness comes in. Because right now you're being asked to move with integrity, not adrenaline. To hold your flame without letting it consume you. To face everything in you that wants to escape discomfort through movement, and instead, stay present in the pressure. Have you noticed it? The delays, the friction in conversations, the way your plans keep shifting just before they land, the feeling that everything you touch becomes heavier than it was supposed to be. That's not failure. That's Saturn's gravity doing exactly what it came here to do. Slow down what isn't rooted in alignment. Because if Saturn allowed you to rush, you'd keep repeating the same karmic loops, with more speed and less awareness. This is why the internal dialogue is louder right now, why your inner critic is resurfacing, why old wounds around not being ready, not doing enough, not moving fast enough are reactivated. Saturn doesn't bring these voices to break you. It brings them to expose what's still running your actions from the shadows. In Aries, being the sign of self makes it all feel personal. Suddenly, your worth feels tied to your output. Your confidence feels like it's hanging by a thread. You look at where you are and ask, why am I not further by now? But pause for a second. What if you're not falling behind? What if Saturn is pausing your external progress so you can finally meet the part of you that keeps chasing without asking why? This is the spiritual weight of the moment. It's not about punishment. It's about pattern collapse. Every time you try to act from ego, the energy stalls. Every time you move just to avoid stillness, the universe interrupts. Every time you react from the wound, the mirror gets sharper. And it's frustrating, because Aries doesn't want to wait. But Saturn in Aries is a teacher like no other. It won't let you fake it. It won't let you skip the inner work. It won't let you chase a version of success that was built to distract you from your truth. Right now, the fire in you is real, but it's not meant to erupt. It's meant to be tempered. You are learning how to move with force and grace. How to lead without collapsing under your own intensity. How to stop mistaking urgency for purpose. That's why it feels heavy. Because anything built on fear is being dragged into the light. Not to shame you, but to be reconstructed. This is Saturn's gift. It turns your limitations into maps. It slows you down not to stop you, but to help you land where you actually belong. And if you can sit with the weight just long enough to hear what it's trying to tell you, you'll start to see the pattern. You're not being held back. You're being aligned. Not later, now. Some tests don't come with warning signs. They come disguised as your life. And this is one of them. Right now, Saturn in Aries isn't asking you to do more. It's asking you to do differently. Because the path you're trying to walk, the one you've been visioning, building, praying for, can't be accessed with the mindset that got you here. This is the last test before the gate opens. And the reason it feels so uncomfortable isn't because you're failing. It's because you're close. Close to a level of personal integrity you've never fully embodied. Close to a version of yourself that doesn't chase validation because she remembers who she is. Close to a reality that demands your full presence, not your performance. But here's what makes this moment so potent. This test doesn't come with a name. You won't know it's the final one until you've already made the decision that breaks the cycle. Because Saturn isn't testing what you say, it's testing what you choose in silence. It shows up when no one is watching, when the shortcut is right there, when your old self whispers, just react, just run, just distract. And your new self says, breathe, stay, respond differently. That moment, that pause, is everything. Because Saturn in Aries wants to know if you're still driven by ego or guided by alignment. It wants to know if you're still defining your identity through action or through integrity. And it will provoke you to find out, have you noticed? Old habits trying to creep back in, people from your past returning with unresolved energy, situations that look different but feel too familiar, like you've already lived them. And now you're being asked to respond as someone you've never fully been. That's not coincidence. That's the loop presenting itself for release or repetition. Because the final test is never about knowledge. It's about embodiment. Can you hold your truth when it would be easier to regress? Can you remain still when the fire says run? Can you speak clearly when emotion wants to hijack your clarity? This is not a cosmic punishment. It's an invitation to prove to yourself that you've outgrown the cage. And yes, the test comes with pressure, because that's how Saturn works. It applies weight until the false self can't hold it anymore and cracks, so the real you can rise from underneath. You are not being tested for approval. You're being tested to uncover what you're still unconsciously giving power to, a belief, a fear, a story that says, you're not ready unless it's perfect, unless you're liked, unless the path is already clear. That story dies here if you're willing to let it. Because the truth is, you've already been prepared. All the pain, all the spirals, all the waiting. They weren't detours, they were initiation. And now, the final test isn't about knowing your power. It's about refusing to abandon it, even when no one else sees it yet. You'll know you've passed it not because something outside of you changes, but because you do. Subtly, quietly, irreversibly. You choose peace over reaction, stillness over impulse, truth over validation. And that choice reshapes your entire field. This is the moment where karma can close, if you let it. How resistance is showing you the door. We're taught to fight resistance, to overcome it, to push through. But what if resistance isn't the enemy? What if it's the doorway? Right now, with Saturn and Aries pressing on your will, you might be feeling a very specific kind of resistance. It doesn't scream. It presses quietly, daily, in the exact places where you used to move easily. Suddenly, your normal rhythms feel sticky. What once inspired you now feels heavy. Plans fall through, clarity wavers, even simple tasks seem to take more energy than usual. That's not burnout. It's energetic correction. Because Saturn doesn't just test your will, it redirects it. And when you try to act out of old patterns, it throws up friction, not to punish you, but to say, not this way anymore. So what if that thing that keeps blocking you, that person who keeps triggering you, that situation that keeps repeating is actually Saturn saying, this isn't aligned with who you're becoming? This is the brilliance behind Saturn's method. It doesn't force you to choose truth. It makes everything else too heavy to carry. That's why your soul is feeling tired. Because you're trying to bring pieces of your old self into a frequency that can't support them. The resistance you're feeling isn't there to stop you. It's there to refine your direction. It's feedback from the universe telling you, you're not in flow, you're in the familiar. You're not moving from purpose, you're moving from pattern. And Aries, being the sign of self, makes this feedback feel intensely personal, like something is wrong with you. But there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is the outdated script that says, if I'm not achieving, I'm failing. If I'm not moving, I'm stuck. If I feel resistance, I'm doing something wrong. No. Sometimes resistance is revelation. It shows you exactly where your power is leaking, exactly where your ego is louder than your intuition, exactly where the door isn't locked. You're just still trying to walk through the wrong one. So slow down. Don't force the energy. Ask yourself, where is it suddenly hard to act, and why? What part of me is attached to pushing through? What would happen if I let the resistance speak instead of trying to silence it? Because within that resistance is the real question Saturn always asks. Is this truly aligned? Or are you just afraid to let it go? If you keep walking into the same wall, the wall isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. And it's waiting for you to realize that your breakthrough doesn't come from climbing harder. It comes from choosing a different path. Right now, you don't need to do more. You need to listen more, to feel where the energy flows, to notice what feels natural, not just familiar. This is the moment where the test becomes clear. You're not being asked to overpower resistance. You're being asked to translate it. Because once you understand what it's telling you, you'll stop fighting what's not yours and start walking toward what actually is. There's a fire rising in you right now, and it doesn't care if you're ready. It doesn't ask for permission, it just burns. That's Aries. It brings the ignition, the push, the impulse. It wants movement, creation, freedom, now. But Saturn doesn't allow that kind of wild fire. Saturn doesn't want your chaos. It wants your refinement. And that's the friction you're feeling. This week, your inner flame may feel like it's trapped in a box. You're wired with energy, but nothing flows. You feel pulled to act, but don't know in which direction. You want change, but every door you reach for feels heavier than before. This isn't failure. This is spiritual containment. Because Saturn isn't here to kill your fire. It's here to temper it, to teach you the sacred difference between reaction and alignment, between force and frequency, between intensity and impact. See, there was a time in your journey where chaos worked, where fire got you through, where survival mode gave you the strength to keep going. But now, you're being called to something higher, and for that, your flame needs to be clear, directed, rooted in wisdom, not adrenaline. If you feel restless, if you feel trapped, if you feel like the universe is holding you back while something inside you screams to be released, you're not being stifled, you're being purified, because raw fire is powerful. But refined fire, it's divine, and Saturn in Aries is a divine forge. It doesn't let you explode. It doesn't let you burn your life down just because you're uncomfortable. It trains you to hold the heat without losing your shape. That means making peace with delay. It means breathing through the frustration. It means sitting in the moment when your whole body says go and your soul says not yet. And in that pause, you meet yourself. You meet the part of you that's used to running, the part that pushes because it's afraid to feel, the part that equates movement with progress, even if it's moving in circles. Saturn is saying, that ends now. You're not here to chase, you're here to channel. And that's what this fire is teaching you, how to stay lit without leaking. You've been called to something sacred. And sacred power doesn't explode, it expands. So what if instead of trying to suppress the fire, you shaped it? What if you used the frustration as fuel for clarity? What if you transmuted the urgency into presence? What if you let the energy build, not to release it recklessly, but to offer it consciously? That's the real work. That's the mastery Saturn is guiding you toward. Not silence, not surrender, but self-command. The ability to feel deeply and still choose wisely. The ability to want change and still wait for the aligned door. The ability to hold power without spilling it everywhere just to prove you have it. Because what's rising in you isn't meant to burn everything down. It's meant to initiate your next level. So let it rise, let it purify, let it show you where you're still leaking fire through your words, your reactions, your impulsive choices, and then choose again, not from pressure, but from precision. You don't need to fight the fire. You need to learn how to forge with it. What comes after you pass the test? It doesn't announce itself. There are no fireworks, no celebration, no cosmic applause. When you pass the test Saturn gives you, it's quiet, almost anticlimactic. But something shifts, not around you, within you. And suddenly, the things that used to trigger you feel distant. The doors that once resisted you start to soften. The energy that felt heavy, oppressive, tight starts to lift. But here's the secret no one tells you about spiritual mastery. It's subtle. When you finally stop reacting the way you always have, when you hold your center in the face of chaos, when you don't collapse just because your ego wasn't fed, you've already passed. There's no sign on the wall. There's no voice saying, you made it. But your energy knows. Your nervous system knows. Your soul relaxes into something it hasn't felt in a long time. Peace without withdrawal, presence without pressure, power without control. And from that stillness, everything begins to rearrange. Because when Saturn lets go, things don't move faster, they move truer. Your timeline shifts, not in explosions, but in alignment. The right message lands, the right door opens. The right person crosses your path, not as a reward, but as a reflection of the version of you who finally stopped forcing. You stop chasing. You start attracting. Not because you manifested harder, but because your frequency is finally clear enough to call in what actually belongs. And this is what Saturn wanted all along. Not your exhaustion, not your performance, but your foundation. One that can hold ascension without crumbling. One that doesn't need external proof to feel internal peace. One that doesn't mistake intensity for intimacy or pressure for purpose. So if you're waking up this week feeling softer, more neutral, less reactive, even a little strange, like something invisible finally let go, that's not emptiness. That's space. That's your field finally shedding the weight of old survival codes. That's your body learning what it feels like to exist without contraction. You're not dissociating, you're clearing, you're recalibrating. And the stillness you're feeling isn't stagnation, it's the recode. What comes next may look simple, ordinary, but the way you move through it won't be. You'll listen differently. You'll speak slower, but with more truth. You'll stop rushing into things that don't feel right, not because you're afraid, but because you've remembered your time is sacred. That's what Saturn was teaching you the whole time. That maturity isn't restriction, it's liberation. That structure isn't control, it's safety. That fire isn't the point, it's the tool. And now you're holding it, with both hands, with full awareness, with the kind of presence that doesn't need to prove itself anymore. You passed, not because you got it all right, but because you stayed. You paused, you chose differently. And now, the gate is opening. Walk through.